I never imagined I'd hear myself saying those words, but there I was, standing in my own living room, looking straight at my son. "Get out of my house, Tyler." My husband had been gone for only 4 hours, and yet Tyler was standing there in his expensive suit like he belonged. This was the same son who had walked away from me 15 years ago when I had nothing. Now he was back, and the timing, well, let's just say it was no coincidence. Something happened at that funeral, something that would change everything between us forever. What Tyler didn't know was that my husband had been a sharp man, far smarter than Tyler ever gave him credit for. 3 days later, when Tyler stepped into the lawyer's office, he thought he had everything figured out. He believed he knew exactly what would happen, every angle, every loophole, every way to get what he wanted. But he was wrong. What unfolded in that room still feels impossible to believe even now. All I'll say for now is this. When we walked out, only one of us was smiling, and it wasn't Tyler. My name is Gloria, and this is the story of how everything I thought I understood about family, loyalty, and justice got turned completely upside down. But before we get to that day, you need to understand how we got here, because this story didn't start at the funeral. It began years earlier, back when I was working double shifts, just to keep a roof over our heads, and back when my son decided I wasn't worth staying for. I was wiping down the same sticky countertop for the 3rd time that night when the bell above the diner door chimed. It was 2 a.m. The roadhouse was usually dead at that hour, except for the occasional trucker grabbing a cup of coffee. But when I looked up, it wasn't a trucker who walked in. It was my son, Tyler, and the look on his face told me he'd rather be anywhere else on earth. His designer sneakers squeaked against the worn linoleum as he walked toward the counter. I had been working this double shift since 6 p.m. the day before, and there were still 4 hours left until my replacement showed up. At 50 years old, these long nights were getting harder on me, but the bills never seemed to shrink. "Mom, we need to talk." Tyler's voice carried that sharp edge I had been hearing more and more lately. I poured him a cup of coffee without asking. After 25 years of being his mother, I knew exactly how he liked it black, with 2 sugars. "You're up late, honey," I said softly. "Everything okay?" Tyler ran his hand through his hair, the same nervous gesture he'd had since he was little. "Look, I need to borrow some money, just temporarily." My stomach tightened. "Tyler, you still owe me from last month. The car payment, remember. This is different. It's an investment opportunity," he said quickly, leaning closer. "This guy I know has been making crazy money with crypto. All I need is $3,000 to get started." I stopped wiping the counter and stared at him. $3,000. "Yes, Mom, and I'll pay you back, I promise." "Tyler, I don't have that kind of money lying around." He hesitated. Then his tone shifted. His face flushed red. "I saw your bank statement on the kitchen table," he muttered. "Mom, you're sitting on $3,000 while I'm stuck living in that dump of an apartment, driving a car that breaks down every other week." "That money is for emergencies," I said firmly. "Real emergencies. Like if the rent goes up, or I get sick and can't work. This is a real emergency," he argued. "Do you want me stuck in this dead-end town forever, working at places like this?" He gestured around the diner with pure disgust. Heat rose in my chest. "Places like this put food on our table. Tyler, this job helped pay for your college before you dropped out." "College was a waste of time," he shot back. Traditional education is dead, Mom. You have to think bigger. Bigger, I scoffed. Tyler, you've been thinking bigger for 5 years while I've been working 2 jobs, just to keep us afloat. He leaned across the counter, lowering his voice. That's exactly the problem. You think small. You've always thought small. No wonder Dad left. Those words hit me like a punch to the gut. I gripped the edge of the counter to steady myself. Don't you dare bring your father into this, I warned. Why not? It's true, isn't it? He got tired of your attitude, your acceptance of mediocrity. Just like I am. I stared at the boy I had sacrificed everything for and barely recognized him. Your father left because he couldn't handle responsibility, I said quietly. Don't rewrite history just to make yourself feel better about asking for handouts. Handouts. His voice rose, sharp and angry. I glanced nervously toward the kitchen, hoping my manager wouldn't come out. I'm your son, Mom. Investing in my future should be your priority, not hoarding money like some paranoid old woman. I'm 50 years old, Tyler, not dead, and that money stays right where it is. He shot up from his chair so fast it screeched against the floor. Fine, he snapped. I'll figure it out myself. I always do. He stormed toward the door, then spun around for one final blow. You know what your problem is, Mom. You're so scared of losing what little you have that you can't see an opportunity when it's right in front of you. You're pathetic. The door slammed behind him, and the bell above it clanged violently. I stood there alone under the harsh fluorescent lights, my hands trembling as I picked up his untouched coffee cup. When I finally dragged myself home at 8 that morning, I went straight to my dresser. The small metal box where I kept my emergency fund was still there. But when I opened it, my heart nearly stopped. It was empty. My fingers shook as I grabbed my phone and dialed the bank. After what felt like an eternity on hold, the representative confirmed exactly what I already feared. Yesterday at 3 p.m., while I was at work, someone had used my debit card to withdraw $3,000 from my savings account. I sat down on my bed, staring at that empty box like it had swallowed my last bit of hope. Tyler had stolen my card. He had drained my emergency fund. And then he had the nerve, the absolute audacity to sit across from me at the diner and ask for money he had already taken. My phone buzzed on the nightstand. It was a text from Tyler. Mom, I'm sorry it had to be this way, but you would never have understood. This investment is going to change everything. I'll pay you back triple when it works out. Trust me. A moment later, another message popped up. P.S. I'm leaving town for a while. Don't try to find me. I need space to figure things out without your negativity holding me back. Maybe someday you'll thank me for having the courage to think bigger. I read those messages 3 times before the meaning sank in. My son had stolen from me. He had betrayed me. And now he was running away like a coward. I tried calling him, but my calls went straight to voicemail. When I checked his room, it was almost empty, clothes gone, computer gone, every expensive little thing he'd somehow collected over the past year, all missing. On his pillow was a handwritten note. Mom, I know you're probably angry right now, but someday you'll understand. I can't stay in this small-minded place anymore. You raised me to settle for scraps, but I want more than that. I want a life that matters. Don't contact me until you're ready to support my dreams instead of crushing them. And at the bottom, one last cruel twist. P.S. Your emergency fund was never really an emergency fund anyway. You were just too scared to live, At least now it's doing something important. I crumpled that note in my fist and hurled it across the room. Then I sat on his bed and cried harder than I had since the day his father walked out on us 15 years ago. The next few weeks were some of the darkest of my life. Without that emergency fund, I couldn't make rent. My landlord, Mrs. Patterson, gave me 2 weeks to catch up or face eviction. I started missing shifts at the diner because I would stay up all night crying, then oversleep. Joe, my manager, pulled me aside after I showed up late for the 3rd time. "Gloria, you're one of my best workers, but I can't keep covering for you. What's going on?" I couldn't bring myself to tell him that my own son had stolen from me and abandoned me. The shame was too heavy. "Just some family stuff," I muttered. "I'll get it together." But I wasn't getting it together. I'd find myself standing in Tyler's empty room, staring at the bare walls, wondering where I went wrong. Had I been too negative, too small-minded? Maybe he was right about me after all. Eventually, I had to move out of our apartment and into a tiny studio across town. The walls were paper-thin, and my neighbors fought loudly almost every night. I took on a 3rd job cleaning office buildings after hours, dragging myself from the diner to the office complex and back home again for hours of sleep if I was lucky. 3 months after Tyler left, I was wiping down tables at the diner when I noticed an older gentleman sitting alone in the corner booth. He'd been coming in every Tuesday and Thursday for weeks, always ordering the same thing: coffee, wheat toast, and scrambled eggs. But unlike most customers, he actually looked at me when I served him. Really looked at me. "Gloria," he said one Thursday evening as I refilled his coffee, "you work too hard." I laughed softly, though it came out bitter. "Bills don't pay themselves," I replied. That was the night I met Vincent Romano. His name was Vincent Romano. He extended his hand with a warm smile, and I noticed his grip was firm and calloused, the kind you get from decades of real work. "I used to own Romano Construction," he said, "retired a few years back." "Gloria Martinez," I replied, shaking his hand. "And I know who you are. Your company built half this town." He chuckled softly, hopefully the better half. Then his smile faded slightly as he studied my face. "You look tired, Gloria, really tired." Something about the kindness in his voice nearly broke me right there in the middle of the dinner rush. "It's been a rough year," I admitted. "Want to talk about it?" he asked gently. I shook my head quickly. "You don't want to hear my problems. Try me." And somehow, maybe because I was so starved for real human connection, I told this stranger about Tyler. Not everything, but enough. I told him how my son had left town, how I was drowning in bills, how I felt like I had failed as a mother. Vincent listened quietly, nodding every so often, never interrupting or judging. When I finished, he was silent for a long moment before finally speaking. "My wife passed away 2 years ago," he said softly. "Cancer. We never had kids, though we tried for years. I would have given anything to have a son or daughter, even one who broke my heart." Then he looked me straight in the eye. "Some people don't deserve the love they're given, Gloria. That's not your fault." Before I could respond, he left a $50 tip on a $12 meal and walked out. The next week, Vincent came back. This time, he stayed until closing, just talking. He told me about his late wife, Maria, and how they'd built their construction business from nothing. He'd grown up poor in Fresno, working construction since he was 16. He saved every penny until he could start his own company. Maria used to say I worked too hard, he said with a wistful smile. She was probably right. But we wanted to build something that would last. Did you? I asked softly. He thought for a moment. The business. Yes. But what good is success if there's no one to share it with? Over the next few months, Vincent became a constant in my life. He'd show up during my breaks, bringing me coffee from the nice cafe downtown instead of the burnt stuff we served at the diner. When my old car broke down, he paid for the repairs before I even asked. When I protested, he just shrugged. Friends help friends, he said simply. Let me be your friend, Gloria. I wasn't used to kindness without strings attached. Tyler had always made me feel like I owed him just for being his mother. His father had made love feel like a burden I could never carry properly. But Vincent was different. He never made me feel small, never made me feel stupid, never made me feel like I should be grateful for scraps. 6 months after we first met, one quiet evening when the diner was nearly empty, Vincent waited until we were alone. Gloria, there's something I need to tell you, he said nervously. My stomach sank. Here it comes, I thought. The catch, the favor, the price. But instead, he took a deep breath and said, I think I'm falling in love with you. I froze, staring at him in disbelief. I know it probably sounds crazy, he continued quickly. I'm 68 years old, set in my ways, probably too old to be starting over. But you make me feel alive again. I didn't know what to say, my throat tightened. I'm not asking for an answer tonight, he said gently. I just need you to know this. You deserve love, Gloria, real love. The kind that comes without conditions or complaints. That night, I went home to my tiny studio and stood in front of the mirror for the first time in months. I really looked at myself. I saw a woman who'd been knocked down by life but was still standing. A woman who had given everything to people who didn't deserve it, but somehow still had love left to give. Maybe Vincent was right. Maybe I was worth loving after all. 3 weeks later, I said yes to Vincent. Not to marriage. Not yet, but I said yes to letting someone care for me without waiting for the other shoe to drop. Our first real date was at Romano's, a fancy Italian restaurant downtown. I'd never eaten anywhere that required reservations before. I wore my one good black dress, the one I had bought years ago for job interviews, and I still felt underdressed. You look beautiful, Vincent said when he picked me up. And for the first time in years, I actually believed it. Over candlelight that evening, Vincent told me more about his life. How he'd started Romano Construction with nothing but a used pickup truck and a single toolbox. How he and Maria had spent the first 10 years living in a trailer on job sites, working 18-hour days, saving every penny until they built one of the most respected contracting businesses in Central California. We were going to travel when we retired, he said softly. Maria always dreamed of Europe, maybe a cruise or two, but the cancer moved too fast. I'm so sorry, I whispered. He reached for my hand and squeezed it gently. Don't be sorry. Be here, now. That's what Maria would have wanted. From then on, Vincent courted me like I was the most precious thing in the world. Flowers delivered to the diner, little notes tucked under my windshield wipers. Surprise picnics at Kern River Park on my days off. He never rushed me, never pressured me, never once made me feel like I owed him something in return. 6 months into our relationship, he invited me to his home for the first time. I wasn't prepared for what I saw. The house sat on 5 acres just outside Bakersfield, a sprawling ranch-style home with a 3-car garage and a swimming pool I'd only seen in magazines. I stood frozen in the marble-floored entryway, completely overwhelmed. "This is too much," I whispered. Vincent smiled softly. "It's just a house, Gloria. It's been empty since Maria died. A house only means something when it's full of life." He showed me Maria's garden, wild and overgrown but still beautiful. Her sewing room, left untouched since she'd passed. Photos of the two of them covering 43 years of marriage from young and broke to silver-haired and successful. "I'm not trying to replace her," I said carefully. "And I'm not trying to replace Tyler," Vincent replied gently. "We both love people who couldn't love us back the way we deserved. That doesn't mean we stopped deserving love." A year after our first date, Vincent proposed, not in some grand gesture, but on a Tuesday night at the diner after my shift, sitting right there in his usual booth. "Marry me, Gloria," he said simply, holding my hands in his. "Let's build something together." Tears filled my eyes. "I don't have anything to bring into a marriage, Vincent. No money, no property, no fancy education. You have you," he said, without hesitation. "And that's everything I want." We were married at the courthouse on a Thursday morning. Vincent wore his best suit. I wore a simple blue dress we'd picked out together. The only witnesses were his lawyer, Frank Morrison, and my diner supervisor, Joe. It wasn't glamorous, but it was ours. The night before the wedding, I told Vincent, "I want a prenup." He blinked at me like I'd just suggested jumping off a cliff. "Absolutely not. Vincent, you're worth millions. I work at a truck stop diner. People will think I married you for your money. Let them think what they want," he said firmly. "When I say till death do us part, I mean everything I have becomes ours." End of discussion. Moving into Vincent's house felt like stepping into a different universe. The master bathroom was bigger than my old studio apartment. The kitchen had granite countertops and appliances so fancy I was afraid to touch them. I kept expecting someone to come tell me I didn't belong there, but Vincent was endlessly patient. He showed me how to use the complicated coffee machine, explained which thermostat controlled which part of the house, and laughed when I hung my work uniforms next to his expensive suits in the walk-in closet. "It's our house now," he'd remind me whenever I looked overwhelmed. "Make it feel like home." I quit the night cleaning job first, and eventually, Vincent convinced me to leave the diner too. For the first time in my adult life, I had time to breathe, time to read books, time to tend Maria's garden, time to learn to cook something beyond diner food. Vincent introduced me slowly to his world charity galas, business dinners, country club luncheons. I felt like an imposter in those elegant dresses he bought me. But Vincent never left me feeling out of place. He'd hold my hand during awkward conversations, whisper encouragement in my ear whenever some socialite's wife glanced down her nose at me. "You belong here because you're with me," he'd say quietly. "And you're twice the woman any of them will ever be." The best part wasn't the money, or the house, or the fancy parties. It was the way Vincent looked at me every single morning, like I was a miracle. He'd bring me coffee in bed, kiss my forehead, and whisper, "Good morning, beautiful wife." For 5 years, I truly believed I was the luckiest woman alive. We traveled the world, places Vincent and Maria had only dreamed of. Italy, where he cried standing at his grandfather's grave in Sicily. Ireland, where I discovered I actually liked wine when it wasn't the cheap stuff. Mexico, where he proposed we renew our vows on the beach at sunset, just because he felt like marrying me all over again. Life was finally good, and yet, deep down, a part of me still thought about Tyler. Sometimes I wondered where Tyler was, if he was okay, if that so-called cryptocurrency investment had actually made him rich like he promised. But as the years passed, the sharp sting of his betrayal faded into something closer to pity. He had thrown away his mother's love for a gamble, and I had found a man who treated me like I was a treasure. I stopped trying to reach out, and Tyler never called. Vincent said it was probably for the best. Some people only come back when they want something, he told me one evening as we sat by the pool, watching the sunset reflect off the water. You've built a good life, Gloria. Don't let anyone who doesn't deserve to be in it mess that up. I should have listened. Vincent's stroke happened on a Tuesday morning in March. 1 minute, he was sitting at the breakfast table, reading the paper and complaining about the mayor's new traffic plan. The next minute, he collapsed forward, his coffee spilling across the headlines. I froze for half a second, then scrambled for the phone. I called 911, my hands shaking so badly I nearly dropped the receiver. The paramedics arrived within minutes, and I rode in the ambulance, clutching Vincent's hand the whole way. At the hospital, Dr. Patel pulled me aside. The next 72 hours are critical, he said gently. The stroke was massive. Even if he survives, there could be significant cognitive impairment. I didn't leave Vincent's side for 3 days. I held his hand, whispered to him about the Alaska trip we had booked for our 6th anniversary, and begged him to fight. Nurses brought me coffee and urged me to rest, but I couldn't leave. What if he woke up and I wasn't there? On the 4th day, Vincent's eyes fluttered open. Gloria, he whispered, his voice weak and slurred. I leaned close, tears spilling down my cheeks. I'm here, baby. I'm right here. He blinked slowly. I feel confused. Everything's fuzzy. The doctors explained that the stroke had caused serious brain damage. Some days, he was almost himself again. Other days, he couldn't remember my name. Sometimes, he called me Maria. Sometimes, he thought he had a construction job to get to, and grew frustrated when he couldn't find his boots. This is common with stroke patients, Dr. Patel reassured me. The memory lapses, the confusion. Some patients improve with therapy, but recovery will be slow. But Vincent wasn't improving. If anything, he was getting worse. After 2 weeks in the hospital, I brought him home and hired round-the-clock nurses. Our beautiful house turned into something that felt like a medical ward, filled with hospital equipment, antiseptic smells, and a constant low hum of machines. I barely recognized my own life, and that's when Tyler showed up. I was in the kitchen making lunch when the doorbell rang. Wiping my hands on a towel, I opened the door and nearly collapsed. There he was, Tyler, but not the same Tyler who had walked out on me years ago. Gone was the scruffy 25-year-old who had stolen my savings. This Tyler stood tall, wearing an expensive tailored suit. His hair was perfectly styled, his watch glittered under the porch light, and his cologne carried the scent of money. "Hello, Mom," he said smoothly. I gripped the doorframe to steady myself. "Tyler," I managed to whisper. "I heard about Vincent's condition," he said softly. "I came as soon as I could." "You heard?" How my voice trembled. He stepped closer, and I caught the faint trace of his cologne again. I've been keeping tabs on you, making sure you were okay. I searched his face, trying to find the boy I used to know. All I saw was a polished stranger wearing my son's face. I know I left things badly between us, he said, lowering his voice. I've regretted that every day for the past 10 years. 10 years? Had it really been that long? I tried calling you Mom, but your number had changed, he continued quickly. I didn't want to just show up uninvited, but when I heard Vincent was sick. His voice trailed off as he glanced past me, toward the grand hallway behind. For a moment, I wanted to slam the door. Another part of me wanted to throw my arms around him and sob. But mostly, I just felt tired. You look good, I said finally, my voice flat. Tyler smiled faintly, and for just an instant, I saw the little boy who used to crawl into my bed during thunderstorms. I've done well for myself, Mom, he said. That investment I told you about, it paid off big time. I nodded stiffly. Can I come in? I'd like to see Vincent, if that's okay, and we have a lot to catch up on. Every instinct in me screamed to be careful, but against my better judgment, I stepped aside and let Tyler back into my home. Vincent was awake when we went upstairs, sitting in his recliner by the window, staring out at Maria's overgrown garden. Patty, the nurse I had hired, was adjusting his fur when we walked in. Vincent, honey, I said softly, resting my hand on his shoulder. You have a visitor. This is Tyler, my son. Vincent turned his head slowly, his eyes struggling to focus. Tyler stepped forward, extending his hand politely. It's good to meet you, sir, he said gently. I'm sorry it has to be under these circumstances. Vincent frowned slightly, confusion crossing his face. Do I know you? Patty stepped in, speaking kindly. This is Gloria's son, Mr. Romano. He came to visit you. Gloria's son. Vincent's expression softened. She talks about you all the time. Then, after a pause, he asked quietly, where have you been? The question hung heavy in the room like smoke. Tyler hesitated, glancing at me, then back at Vincent. I've been living in Miami, working. I should have visited sooner. Miami, Vincent repeated slowly, his voice trailing off. That's far. For the next hour, Tyler sat beside Vincent's bed, listening patiently as Vincent drifted through fragments of old stories, construction projects from 30 years ago, Maria's cooking, and places he thought he still needed to be. Tyler smiled and nodded at all the right moments, asking gentle questions, laughing softly when Vincent rambled about long-forgotten jobs. I'll admit it, I was surprised. After so many years, Tyler seemed kind, patient, attentive, almost like the son I remembered. When we finally went back downstairs, Tyler turned to me. He seems like a good man, Mom, he said quietly. He is, I whispered, the best man I've ever known. Tyler nodded thoughtfully, then looked down at the floor. Mom, I need to tell you something. I'm sorry about everything. About the way I left, the things I said, the money I took. I folded my arms, unsure what to say. I was young, he continued. I was angry at the world and thought I knew better than everyone. But I've grown up since then. I raised an eyebrow skeptically. I paid you back, Tyler said quickly. I've been putting money into an account for you for the past 5 years, waiting for the right time to reconnect. He pulled out his phone and showed me a bank statement. There was over $50,000 in it. It's yours, he said. All of it. I wanted to make things right. I stared at the screen, stunned. My heart wanted to believe him, but my instincts whispered caution. I've made millions, Mom, he added softly. That crypto investment, it was just the start. I've been involved in startups, real estate, a lot of things. I'm not the broke kid who left you behind anymore. Then why now, Tyler? I asked carefully. Why come back now? He paused, looking directly into my eyes. Because Vincent's dying, isn't he? And when that happens, you're going to need family. You're going to need support. Something in the way he said it made my stomach twist, but I pushed the feeling down. This was my son, my only child. I wanted to believe people could change. You can stay in your old room if you want, I heard myself say. Tyler smiled, and for a moment, it looked genuine. I'd like that very much, Mom. That night, I called Vincent's lawyer, Frank Morrison, and told him Tyler had come home. Frank hesitated, then said quietly, "Keep me updated, Gloria. Just keep your eyes open." I didn't understand what he meant. Not yet. Over the next 3 weeks, Tyler became the picture of a devoted son. He helped Patty coordinate Vincent's medications. He researched treatment options late into the night. He even stayed up to watch over Vincent so I could finally get a few hours of real sleep. He was gentle with Vincent, patient during his moments of confusion, and always there when I needed him. For the first time in years, I started to believe maybe, just maybe, I had been wrong about him. One evening, after a particularly rough day, I found him in the kitchen, working on his laptop. "You've been wonderful, Tyler," I said softly. "I don't know what I would have done without you." He glanced up at me and smiled faintly. "I'm trying to make up for lost time, Mom. I know I can't change the past, but I want to be here for you now." I wanted to believe him. I really did. But deep down, something still didn't feel right. I just didn't know why. Vincent passed away on a quiet Thursday night in April, exactly 3 weeks after Tyler returned. I was holding his hand when it happened. Tyler stood silently at the foot of the bed. Vincent had been unconscious for 2 days, his breathing shallow and uneven, each rise and fall of his chest like a fading whisper. Just before midnight, his grip tightened around my hand. He opened his eyes, just for a moment, and whispered, "Tell Gloria. Don't trust." His voice faded before he could finish. "Don't trust who, baby?" I pleaded softly, leaning close. But it was too late. Vincent was gone. Tyler placed a comforting hand on my shoulder. "He was probably trying to tell you he trusts you to be okay without him," he said gently. "That's what I'd want you to believe if I were him." I wanted to believe him. I needed to believe him. The funeral was held at St. Catherine's, the little Catholic church where Vincent and I had gone to Mass every Sunday. The place was packed. Vincent had employed half the town over the years, and it felt like everyone came to pay their respects. Frank Morrison, Vincent's lawyer and longtime friend, delivered a beautiful eulogy about Vincent's generosity and integrity. I stood at the podium and spoke about how Vincent had saved my life, about how he had taught me what real love looked like. Tyler sat in the front pew beside me, holding my hand during the service, his expression solemn, his expensive black suit perfectly tailored. Several people commented afterward on what a blessing it must be to have my son by my side. After the burial, everyone gathered at our house for the reception. Tyler moved effortlessly among the guests, pouring drinks, serving food, and chatting with Vincent's old business associates. He played the role of the grieving, devoted son perfectly. For the first time in a long time, I felt proud of him, and then everything fell apart. Most of the guests had already left, and I was in the kitchen cleaning up when I heard Tyler talking in the living room. His voice sounded different, calm, sharp, businesslike. "The will reading is scheduled for Monday," he said into the phone. "My attorney will be there to represent my interests." I froze. I stepped quietly into the hallway and peeked into the living room. Tyler was standing in front of Vincent's portrait, speaking into his phone, his back to me. When he saw me, he hung up quickly, his expression smooth, almost too smooth. "Who was that?" I asked, my voice tight. "Just business, Mom. Nothing important," he said casually. But something in his tone sent a chill through me. "Tyler, what attorney? What interests?" He walked over and sat down on Vincent's favorite leather recliner, the same chair where my husband used to drink his morning coffee and read the paper. "Mom, we need to talk about practical matters," he said calmly. "I know this is hard, but we have to be realistic about your situation." "My situation?" I repeated, stunned. "Vincent is gone. I'll be okay. Frank is handling everything." "Mom," he said carefully, folding his hands. "I've been doing some research. California law is very specific about inheritance rights. As Vincent's stepson, I have certain legal claims to his estate." The room seemed to spin around me. "What are you talking about?" I whispered. "Look, I'm not trying to take anything away from you," Tyler said smoothly. "But Vincent's will was written before we reconnected. He couldn't have known I'd come back and be here helping to take care of him and you. If he'd had more time, I'm sure he would have provided for me too." "You're not Vincent's stepson," I said firmly, my voice shaking. "You never even met him until 3 weeks ago." Tyler's jaw tightened. "I'm your son. You're Vincent's wife. That makes me his stepson under California law," he said, his voice growing colder. "My attorney confirmed it." You hired an attorney?" I asked in disbelief. "I had to protect our interests," he replied. "Mom, Vincent was worth over $15 million. That's serious money. Money that could take care of both of us for the rest of our lives." I stared at him, my chest tightening. This wasn't my son. This was a stranger wearing his face. "Tyler, Vincent left everything to me. Frank explained it all years ago. Wills can be contested," Tyler countered calmly, "especially when there are surviving stepchildren who weren't properly provided for." I swallowed hard. "This isn't about fairness," I said quietly. "This is about money. You want Vincent's money." Tyler stood up slowly, adjusting his suit jacket. "I want what's fair," he said coolly. "What's legally mine. And I want to make sure you're protected too." But his eyes told me the truth. This wasn't about protection. This was about power. And for the first time, I saw the trap I had walked into. I had invited a wolf into my home. Before I could say anything else, Frank Morrison walked into the living room, carrying a mug of coffee and looking tired. "Frank," I said, my voice full of relief. "Tyler seems to think he has some legal claim to Vincent's estate." Frank stopped mid-step, his expression sharpening instantly. He set down his mug and turned toward Tyler. "And you are Tyler Martinez, Gloria's son, Vincent's stepson?" he asked slowly. Tyler straightened his shoulders, speaking smoothly. "That's right." Frank raised an eyebrow. "Interesting. Vincent never mentioned having a stepson. We were estranged," Tyler replied calmly. Until recently. But blood is blood, and family is family. Actually, Frank said firmly, folding his arms, that's not exactly how inheritance law works. But we can discuss this properly at the will reading on Monday. He glanced at me. Gloria, are you okay? I looked at Tyler, really looked at him, and for the first time, I saw everything clearly. The expensive suits, the polished confidence, the perfect timing of his return. Tyler hadn't come back out of love. He had come back with a plan. No, I said quietly. I don't think I'm okay. Tyler must have heard something in my voice, because his expression shifted instantly, slipping back into the concerned son routine. Mom, he said softly, I can see you're upset. This isn't how I wanted to bring this up, but we're family. We should be working together, not fighting each other. Family, I repeated bitterly, like when you stole my emergency fund and disappeared for 10 years. That was different, he said quickly. I was young and stupid back then. And now you're older and smarter, I said coldly. Smart enough to time your return for exactly when Vincent was most vulnerable. Tyler's mask cracked, just for a second. Vincent was dying anyway, Mom, he said flatly. At least this way, his money can do some good for people who are still alive. I felt the air leave my lungs. Before I could respond, Frank stepped between us. I think this conversation should wait until Monday, he said firmly. Tyler, I suggest you find somewhere else to stay until then. This is my mother's house, Tyler shot back. This is Gloria's house, Frank corrected sharply. And she decides who stays and who goes. I looked at my son, the stranger I had let back into my life, and I made my choice. Get out, I said quietly. Tyler's face hardened. Mom, you're emotional right now. You're not thinking clearly. Get out of my house, Tyler, now. We stared at each other for a long moment. Then he shrugged casually, like none of this mattered. Fine, but this isn't over. I'll see you Monday at the will reading. And I'll be there with my attorney. After he left, Frank and I sat in silence in Vincent's living room. Finally, I asked, how bad is this going to get? Frank was quiet for a long moment, swirling what was left of his coffee. That depends, he said finally, on how well Vincent knew your son. Monday morning came too soon. I sat in Frank's conference room, my hands trembling, the polished wood table cold under my palms. Tyler walked in with his attorney, a sharply dressed woman whose heels clicked like gunfire against the marble floor. She had the kind of presence that told you she ate people like me for breakfast. They sat across from me like we were enemies in a courtroom, not family. Frank cleared his throat. Before we begin, he said evenly, we need to address the matter Tyler raised at the funeral. He turned toward my son. Tyler, you claim inheritance rights as Vincent's stepson, correct? That's right, Tyler said confidently. California law clearly states that stepchildren have inheritance rights unless they are specifically excluded from the will. His attorney added quickly, her voice sharp. Frank nodded thoughtfully. And you believe Vincent would have provided for you if he'd lived longer? Absolutely, Tyler said smoothly. Vincent and I connected during those last weeks. He understood I was trying to rebuild my relationship with my mother. His attorney leaned forward. My client has a legitimate claim. The will was executed before Mr. Romano reconciled with Tyler. Had he known about Tyler's return and his efforts to care for his stepfather, he would have made provisions for him. Frank smiled faintly, almost like he'd been expecting this. Interesting theory, he said softly. Then he opened a thick folder on his desk. Let's see what Vincent actually thought about that. Frank pulled out a sealed envelope from the folder and placed it carefully on the table. This, he said, sliding it toward us, is a codicil to Vincent's will, dated exactly 1 week before his death. My heart stopped. Tyler's confident expression faltered for the first time. Frank unfolded the document slowly, his voice steady as he began to read. Regarding Tyler Martinez, the son of my beloved wife, Gloria, I have observed this young man carefully during his recent stay in our home. While he presents himself as a changed person, seeking reconciliation with his mother, his true motives have become clear to me. Tyler shifted in his seat. That's not true, he muttered, but his attorney put a warning hand on his arm. Frank kept reading. Mr. Martinez has spent considerable time asking detailed questions about my business assets, my investment portfolio, and my estate planning. He has researched California inheritance law on my personal computer. He has made multiple phone calls to attorneys while believing I was asleep. I regret to conclude that his intentions are not those of love or reconciliation, but of financial exploitation. The room went silent, except for the faint ticking of the wall clock. Tyler's jaw tightened, his knuckles white as he gripped the arm of his chair. Frank's voice grew firmer as he continued. Therefore, I am taking the following actions. First, Tyler Martinez is hereby explicitly disinherited from any and all claims to my estate, regardless of any technical legal relationship that could be argued. I gasped softly. Tyler's face drained of color. Second, Frank read, his voice deliberate. Should Mr. Martinez, or anyone acting on his behalf, attempt to contest this will or make any legal claim against my estate, the following instructions shall take effect immediately. The entirety of the Romano estate, valued at approximately $16 million, shall be transferred in full to the Bakersfield Community College Foundation to establish the Vincent and Maria Romano Scholarship Fund, benefiting disadvantaged students pursuing careers in construction and engineering. Tyler shot to his feet, his voice shaking. This is ridiculous. You can't disinherit me based on speculation. Sit down, his attorney hissed, tugging at his sleeve. But Tyler ignored her. Frank sighed, closed the codicil, and reached for his laptop. Tyler, he said calmly, Vincent didn't make decisions based on speculation. He made them based on evidence. He pressed a button, and suddenly the conference room filled with my son's voice. It was a recording, the old man's barely conscious most of the time. Tyler's voice said through the speakers, smooth and cold. Mom's too busy playing nurse to notice anything. She has no idea what his assets are really worth. Once he's gone, I'll have legal standing as the stepson. California law is on my side. All I have to do is play the devoted son until he dies, then position myself as her protector. She signed over half the estate just to avoid a court battle. The sound of my own son's words hit me like a physical blow. Tyler's face went pale as the room filled with his betrayal. Vincent had known. He had known everything. After his stroke, Frank explained quietly, Vincent had a security system installed. Every conversation in the house was recorded. He wanted to protect you, Gloria. I sat frozen in my chair, tears streaming silently down my face. Tyler's attorney stood up, shaking her head. I'm withdrawing from this case effective immediately, she said curtly, shoving her papers into her bag. Wait, Tyler protested, his voice rising in panic. You can't do this. That money belongs to me. It should stay in the family. Frank looked at him evenly. Interesting definition of family. Then Frank pulled out one final page. To my beloved wife, Gloria, he read softly, his voice steady but warm. You are the strongest and most loving woman I have ever known. Your son does not deserve you, but you deserve everything he has withheld from you. Live your life fully, surrounded by those who value you the way I have. You owe nothing to anyone who cannot love you without conditions. By then, I was sobbing openly. Even in his final, fading days, Vincent had seen through Tyler's deception. He had protected me. Tyler slammed his hand against the table. This is fraud. That old man was incompetent. He couldn't have written this. Frank raised an eyebrow calmly. Vincent drafted and signed this codicil during a lucid period, with myself and Dr. Patel as witnesses. His mental capacity was documented beyond question. Tyler turned to me, desperation flashing in his eyes. Mom, you can't let this happen. That money should be ours. We're family. I stared at him for a long moment, and then I finally understood what peace felt like. Family doesn't steal from each other, Tyler, I said softly. Family doesn't disappear for 10 years and come back only when someone's dying. Family doesn't pretend to love you while secretly planning to rob you. He swallowed hard, his jaw clenching. I'm your son, he whispered. I shook my head, standing slowly. My son died the day he decided money was more important than love. The man standing in front of me was a stranger wearing my son's face. 6 months later, I stood behind a podium at Bakersfield Community College, looking out at a room full of bright, determined young faces. The new engineering building was gleaming, sunlight streaming through the tall windows behind me. On the wall above the stage, a plaque read, "The Vincent and Maria Romano Scholarship Fund." 12 students sat in the front row, the very first class of scholars. Every one of them came from a working-class family. Every one of them had fought hard for a chance to be there. Every one of them was pursuing a degree in construction management or engineering. I gripped the sides of the podium and steadied my voice. Vincent Romano believed everyone deserves the chance to build something meaningful with their lives. I told the crowd softly, these scholarships aren't charity. They're an investment in people who understand the value of hard work and honest effort. When the ceremony ended, a young woman approached me. She was petite, with curly black hair tucked behind her ears, carrying a stack of textbooks under one arm. Mrs. Romano, she said shyly, my name is Isabella. I just wanted to say thank you. This scholarship changes everything for me and my family. I smiled through the tears welling in my eyes. Don't thank me, I said gently. Thank Vincent. He believed in people like you, the kind who help themselves and their loved ones. All you have to do now is build something good. That night, I drove home past the old Roadhouse diner where I'd spent so many years working double shifts. Joe, my old manager, waved at me through the front window. I waved back, smiling. I'd visited a few times since Vincent passed, not as an employee anymore, but as someone checking in on old friends. I never heard from Tyler again after that day in Frank's office. Frank told me later that Tyler tried to hire other attorneys to contest the will, but Vincent's evidence was overwhelming. Eventually, he gave up and disappeared, presumably off to find another opportunity or another family to exploit. I stopped mourning him a long time ago. The truth is, the Tyler I had loved, the little boy who once crawled into my bed during thunderstorms, had been gone for years. The man who showed up at Vincent's funeral was just a stranger wearing my son's face. I still live in Vincent's house. I donated most of his expensive belongings to charity, but I kept the things that mattered, the memories, the photos, the quiet spaces where our life together bloomed. I drive Vincent's old pickup truck now instead of the luxury sedan. I tend to Maria's garden every morning, coaxing life back into the roses she planted decades ago. And 3 days a week, I volunteer at the college, helping manage the scholarship program. Sometimes, people ask if I'm lonely in that big house. The truth is, I'm not. I'm surrounded by Vincent's love, by the memory of what it felt like to be truly seen, by the knowledge that I finally learned to value myself the way he valued me. Tyler taught me that love, even from family, isn't guaranteed. But Vincent taught me something far more important. I deserve love that doesn't come with conditions. I deserve kindness that isn't transactional. And I deserve to protect that love from anyone who would try to use it against me. The best revenge isn't hurting the people who hurt you. The best revenge is building a life so full, so good, so honest, that their absence becomes a blessing, not a loss. And that's exactly what I did. That's my story.